Peace and love, family. Want to rise upon the seventh and give all praises to the great God, whom we call in the Moorish paradigm Allah, our Father God Allah, and honors to his holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, El Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. Give honors to our Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. Give honors to the Grand National Seal of the Moorish American Government, Grand National Emblem of the Moorish American Government, and honors to all of you who are indeed a living manifestation and personification of everything that our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali brought when he intended to make us a nation. And this is a special drawing I want to bring on the manifest with our family. Another measure coming forth from the Book of Fire, written by our Grand National Chairman, Dr. Akin Acton Pert M. Heru Tutankhamen Bey. We want to introduce our family to some of the degrees that are within this special work so that they may have a clear conception of the work that they are called to do. And as you can see, our subject title is Moses Meets Himself, or Himself. Know thyself in the great God within. Moses meets himself. Know thyself in the great God within. This is a powerful drawing, family, because we're going to get in some real high lessons as we go into this special measure. And so I encourage my family, that is listening or that will be tuning in to most definitely chime in, because we're going to open up the floor, in an open discussion after we give this a special measure, get some feedback from our family. Anybody that would like to participate, the floor is open. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to try to get this link out here and begin to share it. And while I'm doing this, we'll most definitely be tuning back in again. So what I'm going to do, without further ado or delay, let me open up this link in YouTube. Open up this link in YouTube. All right. We're going to do it this way because I have better results. I want to make sure that our family know that we are live. So, okay. Let's see what we have here. All right, there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share this right here. And while I'm sharing this, family, just bear with me for a brief second. And we're going to give a grand drawing to our family, a most powerful drawing. And this, I actually posted a post in Facebook earlier in relation to dealing with this. And so what I will do is give our family a grand drawing. Okay. Yeah, we got it. Okay, that's one area. So now let me drop this link in a few more spots. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to proceed with this special measure that we have on the manifest on the floor. Bear with me. Patience is the key to all virtue. And that's what we want to get our people into familiarity with. Virtue. Immortal virtues of the soul. Okay. There we go. We're going to take our family up above the sun, moon, and stars. Around the almighty throne is Allah, as we demonstrate beyond blue ether plane. See, we don't keep secrets, we keep it sacred. We give our people the truth. Now, what one does with the truth after we put it out there, it's on them. So, like I said, feel free to chime in by the time this broadcast is done, and all is well. Like I say, we welcome all harmonious thoughts. Those who believe their condition can be better. Those who believe in unity, and those who want to see the oneness within our community. Most definitely. Peace and love. So let me get back to the matter at hand. All right. And honors to those who are already tuned in. Okay, we got the link out there so that our family can get a drawing. And again, we want to welcome our family, because we finna get into some real high measures right now. Like I say, we don't keep secrets, we keep it sacred. Some of these things you may be familiar with, some of these things you may not be familiar with. But the subject title that I have on the floor is Moses Meets Himself. Moses meets himself. Know thyself and the great God within. See, as you keep hearing me state, family, hold up, let me get this here. As you keep hearing me state here, family, I always tell our family, basically, when it come down to dealing with our concept of God, and we touched on this last night, we don't look at God, as some spooky being outside of the self. In actuality, in our paradigm, we teach that we don't worship gods outside of the self. And so this is why this special lesson and blessing is entitled Moses Meets Himself. And I'm going to actually put up the screen so y'all can follow with me as I read from the Book of Fire. I ain't going to read no whole long drawn out piece, but just the portion that deal with this special measure. And introduce our family with something that they may not know. We want to give honors to my chairman, Dr. Akinakton Pert M. Heru, Tutankhamun Bay, for bringing forth this great work. It's 700 pages of straight fire, family. That's why we call it the Book of Fire. So if you ain't got this book, The Exhuming of a Nation, please get your hands on it. It's very important, that you get your hands on this work right here. Very powerful. So let me get into this special measure. And first, I want to share the screen so you all can follow along with me in this special reading. Okay. There we go, right there. That's what we're looking for. All right. And I will be going into my exegesis on this measure. And it starts off by saying, Moses meets himself. The Adamite children of Adam and Eve, the ancient Moabites and Comedians, were the first of the human race to establish sacred temples and schools solely for the purpose of sustaining God consciousness. Moses, a Muslim, learned the knowledge of self while being raised as an Egyptian bureaucrat. Now, these titles that you hear, family, are being used according to context. So we don't want our family to get it twisted and get taken off by a certain terminology that you hear, because there's context that's being used here in order to denote, key points. But nevertheless, it goes on. And it states, in turn, Musa taught these adept lessons to the Hebrew tribes of Israel. The Hebrews, in their prophetic and verbal history, wrote the account of Moses receiving these lessons in their holy Torah. The Hebrew story tells how Moses went upon the sacred mountain, was told to remove his shoes because he was now entering holy grounds. He then saw the great God through the fiery light of the burning bush, and he then received the various commands from his Savior. All right, family, don't get burnt out just yet, because this ain't what you think it is. We ain't here to proselytize to you and beat you over the head with a bunch of religion. We finna get into the science of this. So don't go to sleep on us, right? It says, on one occasion, Musa, the Comedian adept, was asked for the name of his supreme deity. And the answer was simply, I am that I am. Now, I want to keep that in mind, because that's going to come up again in a few minutes. On another occasion, Moses was told to place his right hand in his breast, and his hand went in olive skin, but came out as leprous, white as a European. And we're familiar with that story about, Moses, basically cloaking his hand, covering his hand, and revealing it, and it was leprous and so forth and so on. And even Aaron said, oh, man, please do not lay this sin upon us. I used to laugh at that back in the day when I read that. But nevertheless, it goes on, and it's stated, then the command reversed his hand into its original African hue again. That's Exodus 4:5-8, according to the Piscean records of the biblical. Remember, we stating and quoting these things just as the Book of Fire does for context, and also to the audience who is not familiar with some of the science that we will be going into. So they have to have a basis to be able to springboard into the high vibration of what we finna bring on the manifest. Those who are atheists or those who have opposition against these texts that's being quoted. So don't let that discourage you, because that's not the end all be all of what we're trying to bring to you. Remove the prejudice from the heart and mind if you have it there for a second, and you can get the fullness of what I'm trying to bring to the manifest. So it states, the biblical interpretation of this great and lawful meeting from Moses to Allah is often made complicated with mystery and shrouded with abnormal possibilities of man. In actuality, the ancient faithful were very close to Allah and God-like in their actions. This Africa is the home of the original names of the Creator. All living things from Africa came, the Garden of Eden, and in terms like angels, adepts, gods, Christ, holy disciples, light, Muslims, and man, etc. Yet these simple names can make their surrounding events very complex in the darkness of misinterpretation and misunderstanding. And that's what we have to keep in mind. These simple names can make their surrounding events very complex in the darkness of misinterpretation and misunderstanding. Our chairman gave a grand and most accurate state of verbiage when he made that statement. It says, as for the Moorish nations of the Americas, they must not forget the nature of the West is to make the East appear foreign, dark, and illusionary, always forbidden. And this goes into the aspects to where they begin to divide the land and You hear names popular, within social circles now. They talk about the Levant, which is, what some people would call the Peninsula, Arabian Peninsula, Middle East, Far East, and all this type of stuff. We understand in context what's being stated, but in all actuality, we know that there is no such thing as a Near East, Far East, Middle East, and all. That's Eurocentric philosophy. You see, we know the continent, or the mother continent, the continent from whence most of the light and the truth come, was a continent of one people. And we know that our people, our ancestors, were the original inhabitants of the continent. So that means everybody else that is there now today are descendants indirectly, from our ancestors. You see? And so, and I'm saying that we were the first people. And history records scientifically that we were the first people that was ever to come forth. When you go back to the oldest human it found, it's right there, in the same area that we call the cradle of civilization. So nevertheless, that's a whole nother measure. But it states the Bible have leave ajar the door of discrepancy as to whether it is speaking from the God of the universe or the God of man. That's very key too. It says when it refers to the words said by God, the pharaohs and most graduates of Egypt, holy schools of thought were known, recognized, and called gods, prophets, Christ, angels, etc. Now we using this particular verbiage here, and we just went into a measure last night talking about God versus slaves. And we gave the definition of God, how, the one that is known to many in the Christian circles is Jesus. We call him Yehoshua, or Isa in the Grand Quran, or what they call, Al-Islam. Nevertheless, whatever the case may be, he told those who was going to stone him, we found in our last measure last night, that they were gods. Because they said they were going to stone him because of blasphemy by him being, a man, and he called it and making himself God. He said he was the son of God, all this type of stuff here. But his response to them is that it was written that you are gods. I want to reiterate that. And then we went into some aspects where God had sent Moses as a God to Pharaoh. We're going to touch on that somewhat in this particular measure, but we don't have to harp upon it because we already made the point clear last night. So those who would be interested in getting that, you can go and look at the broadcast that I demonstrated last night. But we driving home at points, and we are trying to get our people outside of the spookism. We know God is an English word. We can go into every different aspect of the definitions that we read last night. We can go into acronyms, Grand Master of Deliverance. What else? Government Ordinance Department. Man, we can go into so many different measures. When it comes to dealing Gomo Ozdabar, wisdom, strength, and beauty. These are different acronyms that make applicable this word God. But we know the word God as a title has always been applied to man, and that's why we like to distinguish God from the actual we'll say attribute that the creator himself is referred to, in the books that have been revealed. God is just English translation of that. So our people should never be offended because the English language didn't even exist when most of these quote unquote scriptures or texts were revealed. You see, this is what we describe it as. Just like even with the word we say prophet, that word didn't exist, over 2,000 years ago. This is our way of expressing that. Same thing with angel. These words, angel, and all of these words came into existence with the birth of the English language, and drawing from the Latin and so forth and so on. You see, which still didn't exist in most cases, before the original script. So we're putting everything in its proper perspective. So anyway, it said, and I reiterate, the pharaohs and most graduates of Egyptian holy schools of thought were known and recognized and called gods, prophets, Christ, angels, etc. See religion. These titles reflect the different degrees mastered by the initiates, adepts, similar to America's high school graduates, associate of arts, master or doctorate degrees, etc. To this very day, everything the European first thought was God originated from African civilization. Therefore, the story of Moses on the mountain, although it did occur, was told in the symbolic words of the ancient Egyptian mystery system, in which Moses and Yehoshua were graduates. In the light of understanding, the most complex becomes simple. Now, there are some people who believe that these events never took place. You're entitled to the opinion, that you have. However, we must state that anytime you have an opinion, it's just an opinion or a theory until you can prove that opinion, a theory, to be true. So we look at these as historic reference points, in the context under which we are demonstrating right now. Because even scientists would tell you that they trace time through telescopes. And that's another thing. We find it hard to believe certain things can manifest, during ancient time because of this so-called technology that we have. But where did this technology come from? Where did these scientific concepts come from? They came from a thought. They came from mind. So the greatest machinery and the improvements upon machinery that has to do with science started from logic. It started from philosophy. You see, and then when it was made applicable and made a reality, then they refer to it as science. We want to make sure that our people have that on, their thinking caps as well, so to speak, right? But not caps, but some of our people wear them. I got the fez on it. It's rimless and brimless. But nevertheless, I want to go on. Listen to the examples that our chairman gave in his esoteric exegesis. Exegesis simply means interpretation. It states, shoes are symbolic of human life, mortal character. The feet are symbolic of acts, words, and deeds. The ground is symbolic of entrance to the self-soul unity of Allah, the third eye. The mountain, the upper room, is symbolic of the heart, higher consciousness, Allah and man's meeting place. The bush is symbolic of the tree of human knowledge. The burning light is symbolic of flaming torch of love, God, and essence of life. The voice of God is symbolic of the harmonies of the higher self, Akashic records, universal authority. The hand is symbolic to the mind. White, symbolic to purity, light, and consciousness. Black, symbolic to death, absence, light, and human knowledge. And you would get taken off if you think that we're talking about some, we'll say, skin tone. Because even when you go into that aspect, really the word black and white is not applicable to a people. That's something that was given to us according to the Europeans as well. But we do know in all science, when they speak of you being in a state, where you are subjugated, they call that darkness. They call that spiritual death. You see? And if you are dealing with being in the purity of consciousness, this ain't got nothing to do with, no people's skin tone or none of that. This is talking about the condition of their spiritual degree of existence. Then you're dealing with white being purity and light and consciousness. So the European tried to take this definition, from the ancestors. In fact, if you go into the teachings of our ancestors, they demonstrated, this is special measure where we deal with the concept of the white and the purity. And this is why you see most people of Africa, when they dress in spiritual garbs, it's always a white garb, you see. But that's all symbolic. But nevertheless, the last measure here states rock. The rock is symbolic of understanding. Upon this rock understanding, I will build my temple. Right? So this is the breakdown that the chairman gave briefly, in this special meeting when Moses met himself. Because we are told that God, was on the manifest of Moses encountered God. But in all actuality, Moses met himself. And it was his higher self, because we refer to Allah as the higher self. We refer to the great God as the higher self. This is not a spook. That's why we say when man look into the face of man, he's looking into the face of God. And if one can see a divine reality, an elevated purity in whom they behold, then you wouldn't act the way you act toward people. Because you see divinity in them. You see love in them. You see truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You don't see evil or everything, that is bad about, an individual, so to speak. So it goes on, it says, now with the symbolic meaning of the words brought to light, the entire event takes on its relevant. Let me make sure I got that there so y'all can see it too. The entire event takes on its relevant and true meaning. During the life of Yehoshua, 1,550 years after Moses, Mount Sinai was still there. And although countless of millions of people have visited the actual site since then, not one person has reported ever seeing a bush burning, abandoned shoes, or a message from the God of Moses since then. What's up with that? Surely, what our forefathers were, we are today. Also, appendix, Moorish Holy Quran 47, ayat 10. This is because when Moses, Yehoshua, Muhammad, Ali, or Martin Luther King Jr., for that matter, went to the mountain to be with their God, the true mountains were above and between their two eyebrows. See third eye. And that's a reference in the book that's actually right here in this chapter as well, which is extensive in its reading as well. You got to get the book, family. It states the earthly mountains as such were mere places for geographical solitude. A place or thing becomes holy when the will of God and will of man are in harmony. That's powerful. Even yourself, when your will become one with the creator that is within you, family, not some God out there in space outside of you, but the God that's inside of you. This is where the harmonic balance come on to manifest. This is where, what we call the meiotic balance of dealing with truth and right, begins to be that which is a balance within the hemisphere of your thinking. When you thinking along the lines of truth and right, there is, no good and evil. There is no truth and falsehood. All there is that which has to do with the higher self or the higher realm of thinking, the higher vibration of one's thought pattern. You see? Now, anyway, it goes on. And again, it says the earthly mountains and such were mere places for geographical solitude. A place or thing becomes holy when the will of God and the will of man are in harmony, e.g., holy ground, Holy Quran. Holy is the uniting of Allah and man. So when you heard our holy prophet speak, for example, since it mentioned Holy Quran, when he spoke on, the uniting of the Holy Quran or the Grand Quran of Mecca, in all actuality, we know that Mecca, from a high state of being, has to do with what is within one. Mecca is above your neck. You see, this is the root of wisdom. This is the root, of divine understanding in relation to dealing with that. They trace the word into some of the ancient Canaanite as Becca, Abaka. Rebecca being at the root, and then they have the ba and the ka, which really come from, the comedian aspect. Ka and ba and ka. When you go within, you're talking about the ba, which is the spiritual soul, and the ka, which is basically, soul, in regards to dealing with its actions. We call it in the Moorish paradigm thinking, willing, reasoning, understanding, and remembrance. You see? So that's a whole nother measure. And it ain't strange because even in the Arabic, they use a word in reference to man when man was being created. In Surah 15, Ayat 26, they use the word Basharin, which means the good body. You see? And so this represents the etheric body. And see, we're going to get into that in a minute, because when Moses, met God, though he physically was on the manifest, his ethers were vibrating outside of the plane of things made manifest. The terminology they like to say, be in the world, but not conform to the world, so forth and so on. This is what they say in the Christian paradigm in their teachings, right? So in other words, the same way, it's also a measure where it say, he that is in me is greater than him who is in the world. He that is, basically, when you go into this aspect, what we're talking about is man being a temple for the creator. You see, he who is in me is greater than he who is in the world. Why? Because the great God is in you. That God is in you, always has been, always will be. And that's why many of us have become alienated away from understanding what a divinity is, because we've been serving gods outside of the self in whom we know nothing. But let me continue to read here. And it ain't strange, too, when you talk about linking up the will, you talking about being in a holy place or a hallowed place. This is what made it possible, for example, for, in the context of what a Christian like to refer to, the one they know as Jesus, or Yehoshua, we call him. They refer to him as the Word made flesh. Well, in Al-Islam, Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam was referred to as the walking Quran. And Noble Drew Ali was known as the seventh of the time. We have a circle 7 that we demonstrate from. And we know we come forth with degrees of knowledge, or the rhythm, astronomy or astrology, and nature. That's the Koran. That's more science, right? So looking at it from this special height, we too have the ability to become, a holy book made manifest. In other words, instead of reading, we got to come into a state to where we become the lesson. And when we become the lesson, then people can begin to gain strength from us as being a source of divinity. And that's just one, because many of us, all of us, have different talents. In Hollywood, in the cinema, you often see them try to depict certain things with Marvel comics. Different comic, characteristics and characters, that have to do with certain powers that they supposed to have. All this is symbolic to basically what, is truly inside the human being when they understand what it means to fall from the heights into this physical realm and be trying to get back to your original state of thinking, being the God that you are. We went from Superman to man. We went from, gods, to niggas. And so we have to return from a state of niggas to going into a state of God consciousness, right? We know if one was looking at the word God and you reverse it, everybody know that the demonstration dog is on the manifest. And even in the Quran, it has reference to that, about one chasing after their own desires in the lower self is like that of a dog. You see? And so either we in the higher self or we in the lower self. Ain't really no straddling the fence. Ain't no real in between. Either you up there or you down there. in a bottomless pit where we deal with what we call the insufficiency of human knowledge. Okay, so let me go on. So it goes on to state, holy is the uniting of Allah and man. The word holy originated in the sacred schools of ancient Africa, and it was used only when the deification of man was relevant. This brings to mind a question with a possible jab slap answer. When was the word holy applied to the Greek Septuagint, the Bible? Or was that when Caesar became Pope? Since Adam became the first prophet of the New World Order, all prophets and other God men and women go into meditation via the nearest place to meet the great God. Through meditation, they cannot take any naught or other people physically with them into the divine light and paradise of silence. They can only take them by the white hand, pure mind, and guide them. It is very obvious the mountain of God, prophets, and angels are not the same earthly mountain seen by humans. So we want to stop right there. And that's a real key point, because now that we understand what a mountain is, we can understand what the temple of perfected man is. We understand what a solid rock of understanding is, according to the teachings of Moorish science. And when we understand what a solid rock of understanding is, we got a grand drawing there. It don't get no plainer than that, family. Let me stop sharing this so I can see my family here, if it's somebody here. Okay, Islam, Brother Rainmaker. Divinely Black, peace and love. Honors to you too. And Jeffrey Billings, honors to all of y'all that's watching. Like I said, let me know if y'all want to come in when I give the moment of notice and I open up the floor and we can have a dialogue if our family would like to add to the measure that we have on the manifest. But I want to go into this special drawing and give my exegesis. And I want to give some support to those who may not be familiar with the science that I'm, like I said, getting ready to go into. We're going to lay a foundation for you, and make sure that you can follow along with us, because we want to make sure that our family have a clear conception of what it is that I'm bringing on the manifest. We want to make it plain, and perhaps one can gain some strength from this special measure that I bring forth, and give one some insight. Okay, let me share the screen one more time here. Okay. Let's see here. I go here because I should be able to share the fullness of my screen. Okay, I'm going to blow that up. And I just posted this on my page a little earlier. This right here pretty much bridges the gap between the measure I demonstrated last night and coming back up into play with this one. And notice it says that time when Moses told Israel that he was the Lord, their God. Now, for those who may have seen this, his brother crazy. What did he mean? And I found this years ago. Now we already went over this portion last night. When we were speaking of Moses, basically God saying that he made him a God to Pharaoh and Aaron his prophet, and that he should speak all that he commanded him. This is in their Bible now, saying that God called Moses a God. He sent him as a God to Pharaoh. We want to emphasize that again. This part I didn't really touch on last night, but it's touched on in what I just read from the book of Fire in Exodus 3:13 through 14. And, when Moses asks God, if he go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers that sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Or ask me who you are, basically. What should I tell him? And God replied to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. Now we know I am actually has to do with a reference of oneself. If we really want to get into the essence of what's being stated here. So now this removes all doubt of spookism. In other words, God was telling Moses that I'm working through you. I'm utilizing you as my vehicle. Your will is being enforced in conjunction with my will. And we call that in more science linking your will up with the deific will. So that's why you'll hear us say, in our particular circle of the Moorish American government, yeah, it's all right to say you are Muslim and you submitting to the will, but the degree of Muslim from whence we demonstrated, the word Muslim to us means one who is the will. And so it's a difference between submitting to the will and being the will. And this comes back to our chapter in the Moorish Holy Quran dealing with religion, where one is given the inspiration to conform to the laws of the Most High. So we don't submit to the will, we conform to the will. And for those who don't know what the word conform means basically to take on the characteristics of the attributes of the great God. So if some love need to be brought, then he gonna send a man to manifest that love to you, sister. Brother, he gonna send a woman to manifest some love to you as well. But it's not based on gender. I'm just giving these as examples. So if you find any characteristics, that go beyond the human aspect, and that, this is something that is nothing like anything that's merely human, then you understand this is a different degree of love than just falling in love, because you really rise in love. You don't fall in love. You see? And it's the same thing when you deal with the concepts of truth. God's truth is not the same as the truth of a mere man, because the truth of the Most High changes not. The truth of man is always various and wavering and so forth and so on. That's if he is not in line with his deific will. You see? But if one works at it, they can link their will up with the deific will. Now, this conversation that Moses was having with the great God, or the Most High, or himself, so to speak, this was a drawing, a primary example of where you always hear me say prayer is when you talk to God, and meditation is when you listen to him. So Moses went up into this special mountain, his highest state of consciousness, his seat of elevation, and he spoke with the Creator. And after speaking with the Creator, he listened to the silent voice that spoke to him within, i.e., the Most High, the supreme being, the supreme reality, getting outside of the spookism. And he was in a state that some people would like to call, some people say suspended animation. Some people call it astro traveling or astro projection. Some people call it reading the book of Allah's registry of remembrance. Some people call it going into the realm of the Akashic records. I mean, whatever you want to call it, nevertheless, all of this is taking place inside of man. So any truth that man deals with, or that is being revealed to man, that truth is already there. We just have to unlock it. Just as we say man is a temple of God, in ancient Kemet, temples and pyramids have inscriptions upon the walls. And within us, we have divine inscriptions, that also can be unlocked or decoded, so to speak. We just have to have a knowledge on how to go into the self and crack the code. You hear the scientists now speaking about the God code and the DNA. Once you're able to read the inscriptions within the self and translate the inscriptions within the self, these become greater lessons to man, because this is something that has been experienced by man. The only difference is when you have a divine mind, you can see the divinity in what it is that you experienced. And so now, just dealing with an aspect of reading the book, you go beyond that into becoming a living book. All of us have this. Ain't nothing spooky about that. Even Jesus told you that people can do greater things than he did, according to the Bible and Piscean records. In the teachings of more science, he told you that he came to teach you the possibilities of what man can do. So look at me doing this here. This is just a demonstration, but you can do the same thing. The problem is that we as a people got so caught up in the act. Human beings got caught up in what they seen. And so when they got caught up in what it is that they seen, family, they lost the sight of the God within themselves, so to speak. They begin to worship gods outside of the self. So again, when he said, I am who I am, man, that's a powerful measure. That's a powerful measure. I am who I am. I'm you and you me. That's basically what he was saying, family. Now I'm going to give it to you even further. And that's basically supposed to be a bust of Ahmosi, whom I always say, pretty much if you were to go into the Kemetic records, he would be the one that was most definitely, we'll say historically, more accurate than a lot of these one the European like to say was supposed to be Moses in the Kemetic records. But notice this is a covenant in Moab, and this is very important, because a lot of people don't even know that there was a Moabite covenant. Also, a lot of our people think the only covenant in the Torah, or the Tanakh, whatever you want to call it, the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, they think that the only covenant has to do with the children of Israel, but there were two covenants that were made prior to that. The covenant of what I call the Monokit Covenant, which was given to Noah, which was a perpetual covenant, and then the covenant of circumcision, you see, which had to do with what the seeds when they reached the age of about 13, which is what Ishmael underwent. And that also was supposed to be a covenant, that basically brought one into the fold. So it's key that one had that knowledge too, because that should, quell all the conflict when it comes to our people thinking that one certain people was chosen. No, the great God Allah chose you under that covenant, but there were covenants on the manifest that had to do with other people as well. And if it was a perpetual covenant and you honor the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High, then you honor that covenant too. But that's another story. We'll get into that later. So the covenant in Moab here, this is very important. I know y'all done read it by now, but I want to read it out loud to your family so you can get a drawing off what this said. This ain't something I made up. This is in the King James Version. These are the words of the covenant which the Lord commanded Moses to make with the children of Israel in the land of Moab, beside the covenant which he made with them in Horeb. Now, notice this is a covenant, right? Now, we just showed you that God sent Moses as a God to Pharaoh. He just told Moses, tell him I am sent you, which deal with the self. Now, watch what Moses say. So it shouldn't be no surprise, according to this record, of what's said. They're going to probably retranslate it when people start pointing this out, though. This is an exclusive for y'all that never seen this before. And Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, ye have seen all that the Lord did before your eyes in the land of Egypt unto Pharaoh, unto all his servants, and unto all his land, the great temptations which thine eyes have seen, the signs and those great miracles. Yet the Lord have not given you a heart to perceive, eyes to see, and ears to hear unto this day. And I, listen to Moses now, and I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxing old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxing old upon thy foot. Ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I am the Lord your God. Do I need to read that again? He didn't say God said this. This was Moses himself speaking. He said, I have led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes are not waxing old upon you, and thy shoe is not waxing old upon thy foot. Ye have not eaten bread, neither have ye drunk wine or strong drink, that ye might know that I, Moses, I am the Lord your God. So now this right here might shake the foundations of some of those who never paid attention to this type of thing. They might think, oh, this is all contradiction and all this and that. But I would say, no, I would beg to differ, because last night we just showed you that Jesus, according to the Bible, Yehoshua, Isa, he called those people who were seeking to stone him gods, and told them that this was the word of God and the scripture cannot be broken, which means that this is stamped in law and it's unchangeable. Y'all gods too. So what y'all get mad at me for demonstrating in the level of demonstrating the godhood? Now this ain't got nothing to do with you worshiping, a man, because we know this God state, is really just a station of one's divinity and being a vessel of the Creator. So we don't want nobody to get arrogant in this demonstration and go to thinking it got nothing to do with somebody worshiping them. And I can give you another example on the greatness of man and how far we have fallen away. Because in the Grand Quran, a Holy Quran, Noble Quran, whatever you want to say, the Holy Quran Sharif, whichever title you want, family, it states that man was created in the best of modes, and yet he is abased to the lowest of the low. He abases himself. And we talk about man falling away from his heights of divinity in chapter 1 of the Moorish Holy Quran. We talk about man falling from his heights and tearing himself away from oneness with the great God. That's what it means to fall from the heights and be abased to the lowest of the low. Man was placed on earth, family. In the Quran, they call him Khalifa, a vicegerent. Prophet Noble Drew Ali used the terminology, man was one who became Lord of the plane of soul and Lord of the plane of things made manifest. And our brother Marcus Mosai Garvey L agree with him on that. Marcus Mosai Garvey L goes so far as to say it's up to us as to whether we choose to be a serf and allow ourselves to be subjugated to the will of another man. You see, we got the same 25 and 7 hours, and I said that on purpose, in a day, that anybody else got in a day. So what we choose to do with them, that's on us. Time never was. So if we choose to allow ourselves to be consumed, in our time and allowing somebody else to rule us, govern us, then we ain't ready for self-determination anyway. You see? But we're going to keep it moving, though, on this special drawing. This is some powerful information. I'm going to go to the Holy Quran. When Allah said that he was making man in Surah 2, Ayat 30, he even spoke again in Surah 15, Ayat 26 as well, trying to pull this stuff back out the ethers. It's on the dome. I really don't need a lot of the books. It's in the head, like Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. So when you go into this measure, he said, know that I'm about to create a man in Surah 2, a vicegerent, a Khalifa. Now, a Khalifa is one who comes after a successor. He said that when I've done, once I've got done, or when I'm done creating this special one, fall down unto him in obeisance. In certain translation, they say prostrate before it. Now, we know, if you know anything about Al-Islam or Orthodox Islam, when it comes to prostration, we don't prostrate toward anything. When it comes to the physical manifest, if that's what one is demonstrated, we know that prostration science come out of Kemet as well. It's nothing more than a form of sun salutations and yoga. But that's a whole nother lesson. We'll get into that at some other time. But Moses was demonstrating similar rite ceremonies and form. Because remember, he was learning all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He came up out of Kemet. So in that meditative process, he was able to be in the presence of the Most High. And you can do the same thing. Ain't nothing spooky about that. All you got to do is purify your heart and mind and get there. It's just that simple. By means of a thought, you can travel the universe. You see? Now, nevertheless, he told them to fall down into obeisance. And the reason why the Creator said this to the angels, family, why he told them this, is because he knew what he had placed in the man. And that is what is called Ruh Allah, the spirit of Allah, the spirit of God. And we showed our family in the past, that this word Allah, has its root in Kemet, just as the word Yahweh, Yah, same deity, different times. In a different time, new names come on to manifest. That shouldn't be hard to understand. Dios in Spanish is still a name for the supreme being. You don't say that's a demon god and all this other stuff. All that's propaganda that came from a lot of Christian background, so to speak, when you get into all this moon god garbage. And I debunked that right there in a debate or discussion, so to speak, a year or two ago. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying is he told the angels to prostrate before the man because of what was in the man. He had placed a portion of his spirit. When I have placed a portion of my spirit into him, fall down into obeisance to him. Now, this is where it get crazy at and people get spooky at. Because it said Iblis was of the rebellious ones. And he was not one to submit. He said, man, you created him from, clay, and you created me from fire. I ain't buying down to that. Can you imagine that right there? Somebody that was basically supposed to create elements, and ones is made from the elements that were created, and then one got the audacity to rise up. And some people get into the argument, well, if it was God, how could he rise up in the first place? And all this other foolishness, and go to argue about a whole lot of nothing. That reason sound good to those who don't know better. But when you know better, you do better. So nevertheless, in other words, it's something that is in man that goes beyond this flesh. It's that I am that's in man. So when Moses was pretty much with the children of Israel, he was basically their manifestation of God during their time. And when it comes to dealing with prophets, in all actuality, they are a manifestation, of God. Notice the wording, a manifestation of God. Only a fool would deny that, right? So if we know this to be the truth, that's why it's been written as law in most religious texts that if you disobey a prophet, then you disobeying God himself. Because it is God in that particular one that has came. We ain't talking about getting into no spookism and 10 Commandment demonstration. I'm saying that every God man that came on the manifest, was pretty much a manifestation of the attribute of the Creator at that particular time. So this is some powerful information. It's plain and simple. But what I wanted to get into about Moses, there's a measure also in the Piscean records in the Bible where it refers to Moses' family. It actually refers to Moses. Hotep, Brother Bachman Bey. Yes, sir. We're going to open up the floor for our family. But yeah, when you go into the Piscean records, it speaks of a time when the Archangel Michael, and not only the Archangel Michael, but the devil was supposed to be made manifest. And what it was saying is that they were striving or arguing over the body of Moses. But a lot of people don't know that this was really talking about the time that Moses was in the presence of his higher self, or in the realm of what they call the burning bush. He was in a meditative state. Those who know about the science of meditation, and they use the term angels and demons and devils in the Bible, but if you go into the astral realm, you have phantom forms. in different beings. If you ever seen the movies like Insidious and all that type of demonstration there, they depicted these things, parasites, so to speak, that try to attach themselves to your body. And this is what was going on with Moses. That satanic element was trying to take his body. And if you are not a mastermind, if you are not clean and pure, when you start demonstrating these sciences, it's dangerous. You can't think like the average Negro, the average so-called black man, colored man, and all that. You can't think like a human and try to find yourself in the presence of the Creator, of God. Because when you leave this body unattended, if you are not pure, your angelic host, which is a thought manifested in you, is not there to protect you. You ever heard of Invasion of the Body Snatchers and all that there? That's just a movie. But just as you go out into that realm, you open up gateways and you allow an opening for also certain entities to come in. So if you are not clean and pure in your mind, when you go into this special mountain of the higher self, it's dangerous. If you still got a lustful thought pattern, it's dangerous. If you got anything that attach you to the plane of things made manifest. Why? Because that's the very thing that you will be enticed by while you are in that realm to break your connection with the divinity, so to speak. And once you get broken in that connection in divinity, because it's so real in the realm of what they like to call the astral realm, as it is the manifest, you mess around and get your cord cut. And then when the ether cord cut, ain't no coming back. Either that or you go up to messing around in them centers of the self and you spontaneously combust. You know what I mean? Oh, it's dangerous, family. This is not spookism. This is applied science that we're giving you right now. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, if the great God told the angels to prostrate before man, in his spiritual state, and you had that lower self, because the angel is a thought of God manifested in human flesh. So really the command was being given to the angelic, thought pattern of man himself. Prostrate, submit to the higher self within you. But then that lower self, that devil, Iblis, that serpent in your garden, we ain't talking about somewhere out in the woods, we talking about in your lower self, go to saying, no, I don't believe that I'm that God, man. I don't think I got no God, man, in me. I'm just a mere ball of flesh. I'm just a human being, flesh and blood. I'm atheist. I don't believe in none of that is within myself, even though I know that the God in me is that which sustained me. Because the God that is in me not only sustained me, but it's sustained creation. It sustained the universe. See, this is where you remove spookism. In other words, I'm telling you, man is God, because man is one with God. Creation is God, because creation is one with God. Woman is God. Creation is one with God. See what I'm talking about? Can you comprehend that? We're talking about the actual manifestation. And see, that's why I tell you all the time, in the Moorish paradigm, our school of thought is what we call the Sebagatala. And the Sebagatala is mentioned in the Holy Quran when it say we take on the hue or the color of Allah. And it wasn't talking about color as in coloring crayons. It was talking about the attributes. The word Sebagatala has to do with being immersed into the divine mysteries. And that's what happened with Moses. And that was the way of the ancient Sabians. And the Sabians are honored in the Grand Quran. The word Sabian is root word that goes into instructor or teacher or the star. So when man leaves the body, he goes into the solar realm, the stellar realm, the lunar realm, and his teaching is given to him on high. So man was given a soul. Spirit man was given a soul that he might function upon the plane of soul. And he was given a body of flesh that he might function upon the plane of things made manifest. In the book of Genesis, it was said that Jacob seen angels ascending and descending on a ladder. All of this is symbolic to what takes place within man. The angelic thoughts that come from on high come from the Most High, the highest Allah, God idea that he have above his neck. Anything that's above the neck supersedes and precedes, we'll say it's way greater than anything that's below the neck. Because we know when we get down in there, that lower self, oof, I ain't even got to go into it. But angels are able to send the ladder. So when we are able to go into that realm, just like Moses, he met himself, he met his God within. Just like all of the prophets in the mastermind, they went within. Proof of this. Even Abraham. If you go into the Old Testament in most states, Daniel, all of them, he fell into a deep sleep and found himself in the presence of the Lord. What do you think that means? It wasn't talking about the average dream, family. When it say he fell into a deep sleep, this man was basically meditating. He was listening to God, communicate. And this is where he was able to get the truth. And I know this to be a fact, family. And I'm going to tell you how I know it to be a fact. Because I had an experience. And one of the easiest ways, let me tell you that too, because our people been trying to find out how it is that they can get close to God in meditation. Some people find it difficult. Some people find it, an impatient process. But the best way to lead the body, family, if you want to experience what I'm talking about, take yourself in a quiet room. And this is the quickest way to do it. Now, I know this is a theory, and I wasn't even testing it. I did it I ain't going to say I did it by mistake, because there are no strange happenings, but I did it. Take a good book, whatever book it is you read, and lay back on your back, family. Because, see, meditation has to do with breathing exercises. And the more you are able to control the breath and slow the breathing down, you know what I mean? You are able to go into that special realm of what they call the suspended animation, so to speak. And so there was a point of time where I was reading, this was over 20-some years ago. I was laid on my back, family, and I was reading. And I had two experiences doing this. One aspect, I actually entered the consciousness of the writer of the book. That sounds crazy to somebody that don't know this type of science. Yeah, we know. But I'm telling you what I experienced, not what somebody said. Only way you're going to be able to show and prove or disprove is you go demonstrate the same process. And we're going to see what the results is for some of you. But you got to be clean in heart. You got to be pure in mind. When you do this right here, a little fasting will help too. So nevertheless, another experience I had, I was reading and I went into another state of suspended animation. And I didn't see anything. I was in what one people would call probably just darkness. And I heard a higher medium speaking. And it was talking about the creation, how everything came into being. And when I'm telling you, family, this is crazy because the speech that was being brought to me was being brought to me in my own voice, even though I know that this knowledge that I was getting was way too great, compared to what I know in the flesh or this human knowledge that I gained or whatever. You see, in that state, I can hear it so plainly, clearly, I comprehended it. But when I came back into, this special realm, when I became awake, and we don't even call this really sleep to be looking like this at the physical. But when I came back into what some people would call quote unquote reality, I realized how less I knew. That's why you always hear me say to know is to know that you don't know. Because ever since then, I've been geared on getting into that same realm. Remember, spirit man was given a soul that he might function upon the plane of soul. So when you function upon the plane of soul, this is what you are doing. It's universe out there that has to deal with information. The ethers vibrate information in creation, family. So this is why some people, they have it right when they say, I don't need no book. I ain't got to read nothing. But you got to have a basis and a foundation. You don't want to just jump out there, and be ignorant about the situation. It's always good to have some knowledge of masterminds that came before you. And you can meet yourself just like Moses. And this is where the real discipline comes from. This is what humble you when you get into this special realm. Family, I found myself in Kemet, standing before the throne of Ra, Arkunum, molding and shaping me on the potter's wheel. I've had that experience. Ones was telling me to come on, come on, come on. These are things, and that go beyond a dream. If you know what a dream is, some dreams can seem real. But astral projection, astral travel is different from a dream, family. Don't confuse the two. The dream, you more in a lucid state. You see? But when you get into an actual traveling, that's a powerful demonstration. That's why Noble Drew Ali said that masterminds are able to cross the borderlands at will. He said he can be over here with you at one point and all the way in India at the same time. This ain't got nothing to do with no spookism. All this has to do with a mastermind going within his self, family, and being able to recognize his divinity. It's the relationship between you and God that become the ship that you are able to travel on when it comes to dealing with going into your higher state of consciousness. This is adept science, family. This is stuff people try to keep secret from you. They don't want you to know this. They want you to think I'm crazy for telling you this. And the reason they won't tell you this, because they're ashamed, they're scared to give you this information, or they think you're going to be like, oh, this individual here done lost his mind. Or they doing that and they hiding it because they saying, well, you ain't doing nothing but casting pearl before the swines. So if some people don't agree with me giving you this, some people can't even give you this if they wanted to because they took oaths. And if they violate that oath and try to talk on these types of levels, well, then you already know what happened to them. But I ain't took no oath. I ain't swore to no man. Muslims don't take oath. We the will. So that means nobody has authority over me when it comes to what I think and what I can bring to the manifest. And in fact, we they daddy anyway. Where you think they got what they got from? We just the plain truth. That's why you don't see no markings on this fez right here. You don't see nothing wrote on it. I'm the plain truth, like my prophet. You see? I want to give you a drawing here. And this is very important as well. Because, man, this is all over the place. In every religious teaching, every scriptural book, from Buddhism to Hinduism, every one of those teachings teach you, family, that God is in you. It's the people that begin to complicate this stuff, and they want you to see them as a deity to worship them. Or they want to be the middleman and have you worshiping somebody outside of the self, and then they can control you. You see? I'm going to give an example here. Now, this was dealing with the history of Adam, and this is coming from the dictionary of Holy Quran. And this was it's a measure in here from Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, who was an Islamic mystic. But he was talking about Adam. They gave the definition of Adam, and he was basically saying that great Muslim scholars were of the view that there were hundreds and thousands of Adams before the Adam that they talk about in the book of Genesis. So the term Adam, which represented just stations, right? But he goes on and he says, the world has passed through different cycles of creation and civilization. This is the dictionary of the Holy Quran. family. That's what these definitions are based upon. The world has passed through different cycles, creation and civilizations, and this Adam is only the first link in the present cycle in civilization and not the very first human being in God's creation. Now, for those who don't have knowledge of what's being spoken here, Adam has always been said the first man and so forth and so on. But that concept of Adam actually came from the Kemetic teaching of Atum, Atum, which was the first consciousness to come forth out of the darkness, of Nu in ancient Kemet. They got the concept Adam, Adam, from Atum. And all that's interchangeable. The D is interchangeable with T when you get into the language, right? So, nevertheless, those who don't know, if they understand the teachings or the lofty teachings of Judaism, when you get into the Midrash and the Kabbalistic or the Zohar, the Sefer Yetzirah, the Sefer Ali, when you get into those teachings, family, it speaks of one known as Adam Kadmon, which is really what we call Adam God-man, the one that came on the manifest way before this one that they talk about 6,000 years ago. This one came into existence with God himself. This one was in the midst of the Elohim. When they say, let us make man in our image in the book of Genesis, he was present then, spirit man. But that's a whole nother measure. So this is why you see Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, he gonna make a statement here in a minute, but they're talking about these hundreds and thousands of atoms that represent cycles and cycle ages. So it says again, the world has passed through different cycles of creation and civilization, and this Adam is only the first link in the present cycle in civilization and not the very first human being in God's creation. The Holy Quran does not follow the Bible in holding that the world began with the birth of the Adam. Neither the Holy Quran claimed that all mankind who are now found in different parts of the world are of the progeny of the self-same Adam, or that all the races which lived before this Adam were entirely swept away before he was born. So they allude to pre-Adamites that was there before this special Adam was born, that they talk about 6,000 years ago. It says Adam was not the first man. Mankind existed even before him. He was a Khalifa, a successor who followed someone. You see? So it says Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, the great Muslim mystic, says that he saw a tablet of a building which showed that the building was erected hundreds and thousands of years ago. Right? He says that once he saw himself in a vision performing a pilgrimage with some other people. Now this is Ibn Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi in a vision, basically making tawaf around the Kaaba in the holy city of Mecca, right? In other words, they're making the 7 circles around the Kaaba, right? So it goes on and it states, he said, while he was making this pilgrim, I inquired one of them, who are you? He said, of your old ancestors. How long is it since they died? I asked him. And the man replied, more than 40,000 years. But this period is much more than that, which separates us from Adam, said I. And the man replied, of which Adam are you speaking? About that Adam who is nearest to you, or of some other? Then I recollected the saying of the holy prophet, that's Prophet Muhammad, in this particular dictionary. He says to the effect that God had brought into being no less than 100,000 atoms. And between each and every atom, there's a period of 17,000 years. And I said to myself, perhaps these people who were said to be of the ancestors of mine were of the previous Adams. See, a lot of Orthodox Muslims don't even know about this. But see, all of this is going back to, again, teachings that deal with cycles and cycle ages. You see? So then it even went on to reason where in the Quran it talked about the shedding of the blood. Remember when the angels was told to prostrate before man, say, well, are you going to put one there that's going to basically shed blood and make mischief in the earth? And Allah responded, I know what you know not. In other words, I know what I put in this man. I know he got more God in him than mere man. See, that's the real definition of Moorish. More-ish. Moorish. Ish is the master word that deal with the God man. So that means you are more God than you are mere man. Morisha, Isha, the goddess. More goddess in her than she is a mere woman. But we can actually use the term God. You see? But it says again, the shedding of blood as referred to in Surah 2, Ayat 30 could not be the work of one person. That's another thing. For the angels to ask that question, they would have had to see blood shed before anyway. For them to ask Allah that. If you gonna play somebody else here that's gonna act crazy, But anyway, it says the references to the shedding of blood of man by man. In 7:11, addressing the people, God says, we have indeed established you in the earth, giving you power therein, and have provided for you therein various means of subsistence, and how little thanks you give. We did determine you, and we gave you shape. And then said to the angels, make submission to the children of Adam. Remember, I was just talking about that earlier, right? It says, and so they all submitted, but not Iblis. He would not be of those who submit. In other words, prostrate. These verses also point to the same conclusion that human beings were already living on this earth. And it was after the creation of human beings, and not just Adam, where the angels received this order. It says the garden which Adam was bidden to leave in Surah 7:24, Ayat 24, was not heaven or the paradise of the hereafter, because the paradise is a place from which nobody is ever turned out from. That's good logic right there. So when you talk about Adam being cast out of the garden, what garden are you referring to? It had to be an earthly garden. You see? It couldn't be a spiritual garden somewhere up in the heavens. So I like that though. But it says the word Adam also stands for the children of Adam and for the human being who is the object of the crown and acme of creation. Now, this is just their definition that they're given in the Arabic dictionary and reason on the word, but it gives us a lot of background as opposed to what we have been taught, under the common teachings of Christianity and the church when it comes to this name Adam. Because we just was taught there, this is the original man, 6,000 years old, and that's it. But we find here that it's a little more deeper than that. And this is where we can see that there were Preadomites. And for those who don't know, the original inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, which is also known at one time, they called it Canaan, it is the Cadmonites. But that's a whole nother measure. I done dealt with that as well. If you go through my channels, you'll see it. The word Adam also stands for the children, and it says of Adam, for the human being who is the object, crown of acme of creation, whose creation became complete after a long process of gradual development and evolution by Rob. So when you hear the term Rob, which is actually what the term rabbi and so forth come on, lordship, Lord, this is when the creator, is one that actually becomes, we can say an instructor, so to speak, through man. God, man, remember how I was speaking on everything that we see from a scientific standpoint come from the God within? Well, this attribute, Rob, it places the Most High in a station where he fosters man from his very lowest state. Some people like to get into talking about Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons, and in other words, a time when man was not so intelligent. But God takes man in these stages, and throughout cycles, he develops man. So man begins to go from a simplistic realm of thinking to where his mind begins to evolve. And once his thought pattern begins to evolve, he begins to create things. He builds nations. He builds kingdoms. He gets better at it. He recreates new methods of this special measure. Some of the wisdom that the ancient Egyptians had now, it still can't be fathomed by the European. They still can't, top their measurements, the perfection of the measurements that was demonstrated by those. And you talking about Moses that was learning the wisdom, all of the wisdom of the Egyptians. So that means he had the knowledge of pyramid building as well. He had the, in fact, they spoke of an altar, that was built in Isaiah, the book of Isaiah as well. But nevertheless, this term Ra, it has to do with, again, when creation becomes complete after a long process of gradual development and evolution by Ra, who fosters or brings up and regulate the things from the crudest state to that of the highest perfection. So man came from a crude state of having no intelligence, so to speak, consciously, and he had to continue to grow. And it says that crudest state of the highest perfection to such manner as to make it attain one condition after another until it reaches the goal of completion. Rob is the author of all existence, who is not only given the whole creation its means of nourishment, but is also beforehand ordained for each sphere of capacity, and within that sphere provided means by which continues to attain gradually to its goal of perfection. By the use of the word Ra, the Holy Quran hints at the law of evolution, which is working in the universe. There is no single word in English carrying the significance of the word Ra. So they are saying that this term that deals with Ra has to do with evolution. And we say this in the Moorish science paradigm. The teachings of Moorish science, we call that a power that exerts itself for the individual at the will of their use. But we say as man unfolds, his God unfolds. So all the greatness that you see in civilizations that have come forth, all of this came as a result of man unfolding into the wisdom of the God within himself. Even in the Quran, it says, it is Allah who creates man. It is he who taught him intelligence. It is he who taught him speech. Even in our Moorish teaching, we learned that we were given, language and so forth and so on. But the greatest that comes from us listening to that silent voice that speaks within. Anybody that you see that has been dubbed or identified as genius, or they have been identified or put on a pedestal for something that they were able to invent, that invention came from the silent voice of the creator that spoke to them within them. Now, we know the European take a lot of credit for some of the work of our people that they demonstrated, and then they come forth and then remix the science that they learn from us, and then it become Einsteinian science, or it become Teslian science, or it become Newton science, and so forth and so on, right? So nevertheless, family, this is the drawing that we're getting at when we talk about, know thyself in the great God within. So we move all spookism, all doubt out of the way. And we get into, the truthism, of man himself being the truth, man being one with the creator. Once you can think like this, we're going to go back to our lesson from last night. You can't enslave a God. You see, so there's a difference between a God man and an enslaved man or enslaved mind. You see, I'm going to show you something here. And this is where I'm going to try to open up the floor. If somebody would like to come, I'll send you the link and you can get in here and we can go back and forth and build. Or, if you want to, you have some questions, you can just type them in the chat. And I'll respond to them questions that y'all have, with a favorable reply. But let me share the screen one more time, because I have something I want to show you, because we're talking about this slavery concept, that deals with man, and it's talking about his condition. Okay, let me see. Let me stop, get this one here out the way, and then I can go through the rest of them and pull up this one image that I want to show you. I got so much information up in here, family. You know what? I just seen a picture too. I'm gonna touch this since I see that's my nephew right there, right? He was doing the meditation pose, right? And I asked him, I said, nephew, I named him Al Mohadiz. I named him after me. And I asked him, I said, nephew, I said, who taught you that? And he said, I just know it. This is what my nephew told me, right? And I was like, yes, sir. This is definitely the one that I'm going to be able to pour this truth into. You know what I mean? But that's what he told me. He said that he already know it, family. And I believe that to be true in regards to dealing with all of us. You see? Okay, here it is right here. This is what I want to show you. Because we want to make sure that our family have a clear conception, on the difference between a slave and a God. Because you can't meet the God within you with a mindset of subjugation, a mindset of enslavement. Even when it comes to becoming a nation that's demonstrating self-determination, you can't demonstrate self-determination with a slave mentality. It just won't work. You see, you have to be determined within yourself where you can't be deterred, from being yourself. And that's what make you God. That's what make you one with God. That's what make you an instrument or a vessel of God. Islam? Okay, so here I gave my breakdown on the 5 folds of man because this is what hinders man from that God self. I said our people have become intellectual illiterates. They fail to comprehend that self-determination means do for self. They cripple themselves by hindering their own progress, then condemn each other for not being able to walk. They say they want love, yet fail to love instead of hate. They say they want truth, yet remain content with truth and falsehood strangely mixed. They say they want peace, yet remain content with the peace of sleeping within the arms of death. They say they want freedom, yet refuse to go beyond the door and the threshold of captivity unto liberation. They say they want justice, yet stand in the way of justice taking its course. And so I said the mayor of fear, false evidence appearing real, breeds self-hatred, murder, lewdness, theft, and everything that harms. Misery is the new slave master. Insufficiency of knowledge is the new slave catcher. Inconstancy is the new slave breaker. Instability is the new slave maker. And weakness is the new slave holder. And like I said, you can't enslave a God, family. You see, you can't enslave a God. So that's not applicable to a God man and a God mind. So what I want to do at this time, bringing that measure to a close, because we done went for 1 hour and 33 minutes. And boy, the time never was, because it don't even seem like I really been on the manifest that long. If you have any questions that you would like to bring forth in regards to dealing with what I brought on the manifest, feel free to type them. Or if you want to get in here, let me know, and I'll send the link to you, and we can draw on this special measure, however you want to deal with it. You see? And we give honors to every school of thought that it is. Because remember, over here, we teach what we call Islamism. And so while y'all getting the questions ready, if you have any questions that you would like to bring forth, I'm gonna show you something as well too, because I want to make sure our family get this drawing. Okay, and this is actually going to my website, Mathino's Archives. And let me share the screen and get you there, because it's something very important in relation to what I just said. Okay. Yeah, this is what I wanted to take you all to. This is actually dealing with there it is right there. The chart of Islamism, the first religious creed. And this was created by Grand National Chairman Dr. Akhenaten Pert M. Heru Tutankhamen Bey, also known as Dr. Elihu Pleasant Bey. You know, he gave a grand illustration of Islamism. So when we talk about Islamism, it's not limited to Arabized Islam. It's more, again, of really an adept school of thought. That's exactly what it is. And the closest to that, you know, in the Quran, we refer to again as the thought of Sebagatala, which means seven as well. So when you become immersed in the divine wisdom, you have a respect for all the holy books. You know, whatever book it may be, you don't discriminate. Because if it's information in that particular book that gives you the ability to be better, you know what I mean? That's what we are looking at. The higher lessons, the higher teachings. You see? And so we honor all of those books in their pristine purity. And again, we want to direct our people away from, you know, being in conflict with each other based upon these different books. You know, because I honor all of them. We honor all of them over here. That's what I respect and honor about Prophet Noble Drew Ali, because he was the one that brought this Islamism to us. You see? And so we have the highest teachings of whom our people know as Jesus, or we call him Yehoshua. The gospel, spirituality, love. You know, everybody in love with the teachings of our brother Yehoshua because they love the love. So they say, right? But many of our people, you know, have also had a lot of hate in them. So have they really had the fullness of the gospel of the love that Yehoshua came to manifest? So we have also, when we deal with the Quran, you're dealing with law in most cases, the Grand Quran. You know, Muhammad brought that. That was a salvation to his people. That was his portion of the truth. You see? And then you have, you know, Buddhism, which actually deals with enlightenment. You see? Meditation and so forth and so on. The teachings of the Lamas. And I like to go into the Lamas and enlightenment with the thalamus, which is at the center of the brain. That's the Ra, Heru. That's a whole nother measure though. Confucius, which will bring you out of confusion if you gain your chi and your balance. You know, the body of life, harmony, the Analects of Confucius. Man, I read the Analect. I even have the I Ching over here. You know, what they like to call a Tibetan Book of the Dead, some westernized scholars. But I have that book as well. But in the center, you also have Ali. And that was our holy prophet. He came, you know, with the Circle 7. He brought us all of those teachings in a small pamphlet, in a nutshell. And that's why when you hear Moors demonstrate, we draw from all of these levels of wisdom. We're not mixing anything. We are honoring the truths in every teaching. But when we go into the essence of it all, and if you really paid attention, you're looking at 4 quadrants, a quadratic circle. You can also see this in the form of a pyramid if you were to draw it in a linear pattern from corner to corner here. And at the top, the very peak, if you're looking at truth coming from every aspect and men trying to elevate, they will move, as we call it, from the outer bounds back to the center. Because we came from the center to the outer bounds and all truth was taken throughout the 4 corners of the earth. They call it the good news, right? North, south, east, and west. News. You see? So, powerful demonstration, family. But yeah, we honor all truths. We honor all books of truth. No truth contradicts another truth. It may be a different way, a different methodology of being demonstrated. Some people think that just praying. Some people think that just meditation is good. Some people deal with yoga. Some people deal with, remembrance. Some people deal with, man, we can go into many different exercises on how to get into the higher self. Many keys to unlock the door of going into the self. But it really all boils down to just simply being the self. You see what I'm saying? So when we say Islamism, the first religious creed, our Islamism is not to be confused with Arab Islam or the Arabian teaching. We're talking about basically, really, to be honest with you, all of these teachings are really derivatives from the teachings of ancient Kemet. Every last one of these schools of thought that I just mentioned here, they can all be traced back to Kemet. And this came to us through the Egyptian adept master, our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali. And so that's the paradigm of the Moors that we demonstrate. So just as Moses part himself was learning all of the ways of the ancient Egyptians and their wisdom, and his works and deeds were in line with that, it's the same thing when we do it from a Moorish perspective. Our prophet Noble Drew Ali, was the one who came and brought us the truth. He was learning all the wisdom of ancient Kemet. That's what we call it today, or Egypt. And so he brought it to us in a nutshell and gave us 7 degrees by which we're able to climb into our own divinity. Because that's what it's all about, self-mastery. When you understand the chemistry, you understand the ministry. And when you understand the ministry, you understand the mystery. So that's what man comes to demonstrate in unfolding into his possibilities. The chemistry, the ministry, and the mysteries of deific life. You see, we call that unfolding from the black phase, and the red phase into the white phase degrees. And that white phase degree can only be given to you by the great God himself. No man can hold your hand, so to speak. You got to have that pure mind. You see, you got to have that pure mind and be guided by the hand of divinity into your own self. There comes a time where every guru and mastermind have to say, all right, it's all on you. I've done everything that I was supposed to do. I taught you everything that I needed to teach you. So now it's on you. And that's what every master teacher did. You see? So let me see if I have any questions. If not, I'm going to go ahead and shut this demonstration down. And we're going to keep bringing them, though, family. Start giving our people some of this high science. Because with all the naught, on the manifest, in most cases, our people ain't able to get these lessons like they should be able to get them. But we dedicated to you. We love you. Okay. That's a good question right there, my brother. And you asked the right brother, too. And the brother's question is, I have a question. I wondered, who was the comforter that the Bible speaks of in John 16:7? It actually speaks of the comforter in many different places. And I'm going to tell you this. I would like that you go and read the book, The Gospel of Barnabas. I got it in my archives, but it'll do too much to try to dig up, the particular copy right now. Now, The Gospel of Barnabas, was a book that came from the Copts. And for those who know who the Copts were, these were the original, Nazarenes, basically, that come straight up out of Kemet. And in this Gospel of Barnabas, they tell you exactly who the comforter is. Many have already said it too. They use the term paraclete, one who comes after another, almost similar to the term Khalifa. But it was actually our brother, Prophet Muhammad, was the comforter that came after, the brother Jesus, as they call him, our Yehoshua. And not only that, if you go into the book of Revelation, chapter 14, it speaks of an angel coming after the Lamb. You get a chance, look at that chapter, Revelation 14. It speaks of an angel that comes after the Lamb, but angels came in the form of men Remember, angel is a thought of God manifested in the flesh. So Muhammad, according to the Gospel of Barnabas, was the one that came after Jesus. And Jesus, Yehoshua, foretold the coming of Muhammad. He told him, he said, I am not the Messiah whom all the earth expect. And as his followers were asking him, well, who is this one? If you're not the one, then who it is? And then he said, well, but this one has basically been preserved for a special time appointed. And then he basically told them that his name was Muhammad. This is in the Gospel of Barnabas. Now, I asked this question. Why did they take this out of the Bible? You know what? If you give me a chance, email me at egyptianadept@gmail.com and I'm going to send you a copy. Because, I build on this stuff all the time. And then you can go from there with the research. But yes, sir, that was a real controversy back in the days when I first came into the consciousness. And I used to go back and forth with our Christian family, because I'm saying if he told you that a comforter was coming behind him, and he even did give you the description of this comforter, but he said also the spirit of truth will come behind him. My main thing that I would try to get them to see is that this is not talking about some spook somewhere. If this comforter or the spirit of truth come, then surely it has to manifest in a vessel. You feel me? Because you ain't going to see no spirit. Spirit's inside a body. Spirit's inside of things in creation. So the spirit by the presence of some physical entity. So it had to be a physical man that would come. Because surely the disciples wasn't going to be waiting on no spirit and they're going to be able to bear witness to a comforter. Now, some people like to get spooky and say the comforter was the Holy Spirit. Well, in certain doctrine, the Holy Spirit was a man too, according to certain interpretations. The angel Gabriel came in the form of a man. You see? So, even in the Bible that I have over there behind me called the Sword, I had it for years. It tell you, angel mean messenger, it mean man. So in Revelation 14, it tell you that the Lamb was only able to deliver 144,000. But then it follows up and it says behind the Lamb that they seen another angel, messenger, come forth, right? And this one that came forth had what they called the everlasting gospel for those who remained upon the earthland. And they were given a new song to sing. Even in the book of Malachi, it speaks of the book of remembrance that will be revealed to these particular people. And it talks of a book of remembrance, right? Now that book of remembrance, in the Hebrew, the word remembrance is zakar. In Arabic, it's zikr. So the book of remembrance, the Quran is referred to as the book of remembrance. So that book of remembrance is written for those people who would teach that God is one, he's the supreme reality, and so forth and so on. That's the new song they would be singing, which is a new truth that would be different if one is looking at it from the surface level, but it actually is the same when you go into the essence of it. So we'll say finite minds can't comprehend things that are infinite. If one is thinking carnally, they can't see these things that are spiritual, so to speak. That's what Jesus in the Bible and different prophets used to say all the time. So yes, it was our beloved brother Muhammad. And our 101s even teach you that. We use the term, reincarnation in relation to dealing with this matter. And there were indeed some processes in the Bible that talk about reincarnation, family. I can give you one right here off the head. When it speaks of John the Baptist, it says, if you are willing to receive, he is Elijah whom was to come. Now we know Elijah didn't see a death, quote unquote, according to the Bible. But they say he was taken up into a chariot. Some people would like to translate this as a spaceship. And I done seen it from our New Nubian family as well as the House of Israel through Yahweh be Yahweh, explaining it this way. That's all good and well. That's the exegesis of it. But nevertheless, I get into the basic form and say this is the spirit of truth that came through Elijah. It manifested through John in all simplicity. That's the form of what we call reincarnation in all actuality. It's simple. It ain't no measure what people just think, oh, you get caught up and you come back as an ant. It's simply talking about the transfer of energy, family, or the transition of the God power from one God man to the next. You see what I'm saying? So that's what we're talking about. The comforter, that transition of power came with Prophet Muhammad, because he was the only prophet that came behind Jesus, or Yehoshua as we call him, in the Moorish paradigm, that brought anything worthwhile when it came to influencing a nation of people. And if we paid attention to the covenants that I was talking about, the covenant in Islamism, family, that covenant I was talking about, a lot of people don't know. All you got to do is look at the sons that come through the lineage of Abraham. You know, you got 12 princes from Ishmael and 12 through the line of Israel. 12 and 12 is 24. God at the center, 25. And there you go. That's your mystery that's unveiled in regards to dealing with the 24 elders in the book of Revelation. Now you know who they are. So we also know that if you really want to make things simplistic, because we like to talk about testing things. See, as a Moorish scientist, what we demonstrate, you know, we bring the truth forth on this special level. And we can just deal with language. It's very important that we understand language, because if we understand language, family, and etymology, the etymological roots, they can take us into much truth that we come into relation with. And then when we get into archaeology, you know, and all the other information, it becomes plain. So, for example, we know of the relation between, you know, Isaac and Ishmael, and we place this as fact based on lineage of language. And I'm going to show you how. If you go into the dialect of the language, you know, of what they call Hebrew, and we know that's really Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite, some call it Paleo-Hebrew, but nevertheless, you will hear one say shalom. But when you go into the Arabic, you will hear one say salam. So this shows you the close relation to the people through linguistic ties. You see, shalom, salam. Both of these words mean peace. And that's why if you go into the Bible, and they said when Yehoshua came forth after the quote-unquote supposed crucifixion, which really never happened, that's a whole nother teaching right there, family. You know, when he came forth, he said, peace be unto you. What did he say? Shalom aleichem. Shalom aleichem. That's what he said, family. Now, in the Arabic, it's assalamu alaikum. You see? Same thing being said. Two different dialects. Two different dialects, family. And so Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you know, to the Moors was the one that came in the same spirit of all of those who came before him. You know, and that's why, you know, at times you'll see him in his records where he said, when I was Noah, you know, and I was building the ark, or when I was Muhammad, you know, he say that Yehoshua will come again. He's talking about the spirit, not anything spooky. You know, so Prophet Noble Drew Ali came in that same spirit, you know, and definitely, you know, he exemplified, you know, a whole lot in prophecy. Because, see, that's the thing, because people say, well, you know, the proof of prophethood in Islam and Christianity has certain similar factors. If somebody speaks in a prophetic way and it don't come to pass, people say, well, that's somebody that's talking out the side of their neck. But family, this prophesies things and they come to pass. then these individuals that you better heed. Noble Drew Ali said, that basically watch his prophecies. He said every word that he speak is spirit, and the Moors had better take heed. You see? And so I'm going to answer your question in 1 second, Brother Bachman Bay. So if we understand this, we understand when Prophet Noble Drew Ali also went to saying, if the European is just, they will have an Asiatic president and European vice president. We've seen that with Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And he also spoke on if you have a European president, you have an Asiatic vice president. We see that now with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Right? Now, Noble Drew Ali also spoke of weapons being produced, mass destruction. Our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali spoke of, plagues that will come on the manifest. And he was saying this stuff by name, family. Now we see when we deal with the prophets of Muhammad, a prophet of Jesus in the Quran and Bible, it's a little vague, and we got to do some decoding in order to understand what's being said. And we can see a lot of stuff unfolding. But when somebody prophesies something in detail, family, and it unfolds like that, it would be unwise not to take heed to that. Just as the European put Nostradamus on a pedestal, and talking about he prophesied this and prophesied that, then you got to be crazy, if you think it's impossible for a prophet to come to us as well. Because we had to have the truth too. If it was Allah's will, it would have been an Arab that came to America before Prophet Noble Drew Ali with Islam. But that's not what we need. Every prophet that brings a message to a people, and I mentioned this last night, he bring it to them based upon their conditions. And so the conditions that we under, had to do with the message that Noble Drew Ali brought us, the state in which he found us. So I give honors to you, brother. I hope that's a brother there. And if it's a sister, I pardon myself, either or. Divinely Black, we give honors to your family. And I'll say that's a powerful question. And that's very key because a lot of our people, going back and forth over that subject. But, we can prove it to be true. We got the document. Only thing is the Roman Catholic Church took the book out of the original books they had, and I don't know who gave them authority to do it, but they decided not to put it in there. And see, our people done went crazy with the word pseudo, and that's where they get this word pseudo from, the European that took all of our books that had African origin and Coptic in it and called it pseudo. And our people slanging that word around like it ain't no coming home, so to speak. And it's a sad situation when we begin to counsel our own culture and we think that we're doing good in whatever it is we do. And some of our people done went into a state of becoming atheists. But I always say that's impossible. An atheist is just somebody that's ungrateful, or somebody that's troubled, but soon as a death-defying situation come to one, they'll be hollering, oh my God, Lord, have mercy. And that ain't to go at the atheist family if that's what they want to believe now. Don't get me wrong. I'm just stating the facts, because it's not in the nature of man to reject the divinity that is within him. It's impossible. Now, you may reject gods outside of the self. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But if you reject gods outside of the self, an atheist family, at least embrace the God that is within you. That's just my words of advice for you. Now, Brother Bachman Bay, you say, how can man get to this ring without fasting? Gratitude. Fasting is not necessary to really get to the rim. It's just helpful in getting one there. That's why in the month of Ramadan, for example, in the night of power, the 9th month and 27th day, it says that man is able to deal with what they call Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. This was actually during the period where Muhammad was said to get his revelation. In other words, he was traveling. They say he went through the seven heavens. He was initiated by the angel Gabriel. You feel me? So he was took up into that special realm. They say he was transported from Mecca to Jerusalem. You see? So fasting, it just enhances the possibilities, but it's not necessary. Because if you're a mastermind, you can do it without fasting. I'm just saying that is a key to help you unlock the door to that divinity. And I understand too, brother, about the condition that you discussed, as well, Islamism. And oh yeah, in regards to the concept of the many atoms, what was being spoke of here in that special measure, when you get into that dictionary of the Quran, is showing you that we have been taught, according to the Christian paradigm, to accept Adam as a man that existed 6,000 years ago. He was the first man created. But even in the Bible, if you go into the Bible and read in the book of Genesis, you find that not to be so. Because Adam came after everything was created, the plants, the trees, and everything else. Then he came on the sixth day, right? But unbeknownst to many, when they describe the one who comes on the seventh day, there's a different description between the man that was made on the sixth day and the man that was made on the seventh day. I'm going to show you the distinction in the book of Genesis. The man that was made on the sixth day in the book of Genesis was made by the Elohim. Let us make man in our image, right? The man that was made on the first day with God himself, that special one was made by God himself by means of thought. He was the thought of the great God made manifest. Adam came forth with some assistance of the Elohim. And so he was made in image. Adam was made in the image of the spiritual man. He wasn't even made in the image of God. It was the spiritual man, flesh divine as we call it, that was actually made in the image of God. And they would call that the first Adam, so to speak. Adam Codman is who I'm referring to. You see, so it's a difference between the two. And so that's where they was going, saying that there were different cycles, between it. I'm going to show you a picture of this chart real quick too, so you can get a better drawing, Brother Bachman Bay, real quick on that issue. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, because I drawed a lot of charts up, to give our family some insight into these teachings so that they can some way visualize a lot of this stuff, because it's easy for me to speak this stuff straight off my head, because I've been doing it for so long. But I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here, let me open up this image here. Let me open up this image here for you as well, because we dealing with adept science. We teaching adept lessons in the public. That's what we do in the Moorish American government. A lot of people don't agree with this. They think we supposed to hide the truth, but we don't hide the truth, because masterminds are revealers of the lights. We don't conceal the light, family. We giving it to you as it is. As it is above, so it is below. As it is within, so it is without. Okay, I got them open. Now let me share the screen right here. And I hope this thing pick up. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there we go right now. Okay. So, you heard me talking about Adam Codman. See, now this is the lofty teachings that come through the teachings of, the Sefer Ali, or the Sefer Yetzirah, or the Zohar, or the Kabbalah, and so forth and so on. The Kaaba of Allah, soul of man, right? If you look at this, family, and look at the comparison, these are called Sephirah. It's 10 of them. I ain't going to go into trying to break all of it down right now, but just know that the lowest one dealing with the earth or the physical plane is known as Asia. You see Asia right there? That's what it's called. This is the earthbound state. Right here, this is where life come forth from, right? You know, the physical part of life anyway. So now compare Adam Codman, and this is a chart to give you the example on the first Adam before the physical Adam now. Notice these same points here are actually synonymous with these circles. So seraphim would be here, you know, the thrones, the Ophanim and understanding would be here, cherubim and wisdom, you see it over here, you know, so this chart corresponds, you know, with this. This is called third heaven. Remember we said angel is a thought of Allah manifested in the flesh. So if we're dealing with what's above the neck, notice it says the creator. Now Adam Codman, according to history, was said to take part in his own creation. That ain't the same teaching of the Adam that came on the sixth day. It's a difference, right? So you have seraphim, you know, the angels of love, thoughts of love, right? The throne is here as well, right? Understanding, wisdom, cherubim. So your cherubim and your seraphim is above the neck. Ain't that what we teach, Brother Bachman Bay? I'm just showing it to you on the charts. That's a pyramid right there, right? Now, second heaven, this is where you deal with powers, dominions, you know, what they call choriotes, mercy, forgiveness, harmony, and peace, virtues, exhaustion, beauty, and all of this is dealing with what is in man. You know, these are the immortal virtues in the human being, not just man, but the God woman as well, any child of the Most High God, right? Archangels, princes, glory, splendor, victory, the angels in the foundation, the first heaven. Notice that gets into the earth. Now, when we go into our teachings of more science, Brother Bachman Bay, we say, hear now ye cherubim, ye seraphim, ye angels, and ye men. So it is the man himself that has to become the mastermind and get into an angelic thought pattern. But that's just in the first heaven when we become swift angel, right? But then when we unfold through each of the heavens, we move into the realm of cherubim and seraphim. And we see seraphim as the high. Cherubim are the ones who protect the way into the holy city. So in other words, you have a God state of mind, you can keep demonic thoughts from coming into them in special demonstration, right? You can thwart the thoughts with the scimitar, just like the angel in the Garden of Eden turned in every direction to make sure that those who were cast out couldn't come back in. So that's what you do. You guard your thoughts. Once you guard your thoughts from the lower self trying to attack the higher self, then you become fixed in your divinity. You are set in defense of the gospel that is within you. Seraphim is the spirit of the Almighty God Allah. So in other words, your Godhead, family, and I just said it, God is within you. When Moses met God, he met him where? Right here between his eyebrows. That third eye. Islam. So yeah, this is the third heaven chart. I didn't create this. This is actually out there. You know, so when our prophet talked about third heaven, you know, this is dealing with the hierarchy of the angels. And not only that, family, when you get into this concept with this third heaven in the Bible, it said they knew one who was taken up in the third heaven. Whether bodily or spirit, they don't know. They was talking about Enoch. You see, who was really Tehuti in ancient Kemet. That's a whole nother measure. But guess what? In the Gospel of Barnabas, it tells you that the personage of Jesus was placed over Judas. And basically, Judas' person was placed over Jesus. And so they thought they was taking Jesus, Yehoshua, to the cross. But in all actuality, it was Judas that was being crucified. That's what the Gospel of Barnabas said. And it was said, you know, Yehoshua, Jesus told his people, because they thought it was him, his mama, his disciples, all of them thought that was him up there on the cross. But it said that the angels had taken him away and they took him into third heaven. Now, that's a whole nother measure. So third heaven is a real place when you get into these doctrines, family. It's a state of being, a state of consciousness. But remember, masterminds can transmute at will. So if one was able to place, in Jesus, according to the, Piscean records, Quran and all that, it's one had certain powers that we have as well. Brother, the Prince of Peace, our German Bay, was a man that could move things with his mind. He could teach mental telepathy, family. This man was able to cross the borderland at will, so this ain't nothing strange. But nevertheless, the Gospel of Barnabas say that Yehoshua wasn't crucified, it was Judas. And even in the Bible, it say he was died by being hung on a tree. They even refer to the term dealing with crucifixion as being hung on a tree. They even said that Jesus was supposed to be killed by being hung on a tree. You see, so you see the similarities between the story. But it was said that it was made for them to think that it was him that was crucified. This is what he told his disciple and his mother. Because they say, why did you make us feel this way, this hurt, this pain, that it was you? And he said this was so that, you would basically be chastised in this world by your suffering rather than being chastised in the hellfire. Because there will be those who come on the manifest teaching that I am God, as to the extent of worshiping me, worshiping me and bowing down to me, and all this type of demonstration. He won with God being on that aspect, but he's not God to the extent of worshiping. Like we God, but you don't bow down and worship us. You know what I mean? You bow to the spirit in man. You see what I'm saying? The spirit in the self. And so when it comes to that aspect right there, that's simply respect. But nevertheless, yeah, it says that, that they were chastised with being emotionally distraught, thinking he died, so they wouldn't be punished in the hereafter. And that's when he told them that Muhammad would be sent. But I said all that to say that Yehoshua was took in the third heaven. And I'm just mentioning these different areas in certain scriptures where it mentioned third heaven. But third heaven is really above the net. And I noticed when you come here, it said barriers of time and space. See, you got to break the barrier of time and space. Now, you ever heard somebody that have a near-death experience? Most people that have a near-death experience, family, when they go into a state of dying and they come back, they tell you, man, time was different. It's like they was moving through all points of time at the same time. You have people make this. I've seen a couple of people say that. So when you break the barrier of time and space, family, you can read the records of the past and you can read the records of the future. You see what I'm saying? And that's what prophets are able to do, because they keep it above the neck. They stay all up in the higher self and third heaven. You see? So now, hold up real quick, because I didn't mean to close that. I was trying to show you the other slide in relation to that. So here it is right here. This is, notice it say, in the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. Now there's a reason why this is said. If you go across the board in most religious teachings, family, the name that is referred to as the supreme being, I don't know why it occurred like that. It always end up coming into the shape of the form of a man. Our human body depiction. I don't know, but I know we made in the image, but this is a prime example of it. In the beginning was the word with God, and the word was God. But even more, appealing when you get into the aspect of what they talk about now with the God code being found in the DNA in relation to these letters, the tetragrammaton, or the 4-letter word. You see what I'm saying? So all of this represent that Adam Cod man before the physical Adam came into the manifest. That spirit man, flesh divine, or as they call it, the time when man could transmute at will. Just like an angel, though they are etheric body, they can come in human form. This was when man was in that special state, back during that time, during the pre-Adamite era. You see? And then through various cycles to come after that, after time going into the manifest, humanity was on the manifest way before that 6,000 years ago. And they call them Preadomites. So, yeah, all of this is synonymous with the Sephiroth. And if you look at it closer, and they use also the comparison to the tree of life here, and you look at the DNA, helaxial shape is just the same as this special tree of life. And that's your DNA strand. You see? Powerful. In the beginning was the Word with God, and the Word was God. Now, this is powerful because it even mentions that, there was one that existed with God from the beginning of creation. So that ain't nothing new. You see? That ain't nothing new. Let me show you this right here. And then I'm going to read that. This is the chart that I created, so that the Moors would have a better understanding. And if you notice, I have Adam Covenant here, and that's Genesis 2:4-7. That's when the Spirit of God was breathed into man, and he became a living soul. This man was created before the plants and the trees and everything. Even though they put it in Genesis 2, this is really part and parcel of Genesis 1. And they just giving you a rundown in chapter 2 of what took place in 1 with leaving certain information out. But this is the man that was born before or came forth before the trees, the plants, and everything. And it says it right here in Genesis 2:4-7. So if he came before the plants and the trees, before any rain or anything happened, then we know this can't be the same as the Adam, who they call Ha-Adam Arishun, who came on Genesis 1:26. Because he came after the water, he came after, the plants and the trees. So this man before the plants and the trees, being spirit clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah, is what we call it in the Moorish teachings. Flesh divine. Yeah, this was the ancient Adam, which goes back to the Kemetic teaching, Autum. And I even got some teaching that actually tell you that Autum and Atum and Adam Kadmon is one and the same. So that's why you'll hear me say Ish and Isha. These were indigenous Muslims. They were the first Muslim. Muslim existed before Asiatic, because Asiatic is the manifest. The Muslim part of you come from the Creator. That's the will of God. You see? So Adam Kadmon and those who come from him are indigenous Muslim. That's who our ancient mother and father is, not Adam and Eve. See, Adam and Eve deal with the physical aspect, but we talking about the spiritual. Our spiritual mother and father is Ishisha. You see, the indigenous spirit of the Muslim. You see? We fell down in here, see what the Elohim here, they came and they created this man. But if you look, you see instability, weakness, insufficiency, inconstancy, misery. All that's with the fall of man. Even though the pentagram is not upside down or inverted, we still kept man in his perfection. That we show the potential for the fall in this physical man. So this star here represents the physical man. This star above the Elohim represent the man who was one with God. And notice, Adin, he was in a Garden of Eden within his state of mind, harmony, truth, balance, right order, and justice. And that justice is the barrier between the realm where he was and the realm of everything that will come into the manifest after him. Now, if you look at this name here, YHWH, which was the tetragrammaton I showed you originally, but this is in what they would call Proto-Canaanite, Proto-Sinaitic, pictoglyphs. This is special drawing here, family. If you pay attention, you see two entities in the language that look like stick people, right? You see an arm here, you see what looks like the letter Y, right? But this is really W. So This is YHWH, the same thing. They say Yahweh, Yahuwah in Arabic, Yod Hey Wav. It's all there. But the key is, if you look at the name Asha and Aish, which is really Ish and Isha, same thing. When you look at these letters, there are two letters that connect these names. And there are also two letters that, are different. The two letters that connect both of the name Ish and Isha is the one with the hands of the stick person here and then the arm here. But this is Yah. If you go into the letters here, Yah is the root of the name Yahuwah, Yahweh, Yahweh, as some people say, right? Yah is also the ancient name that goes back to Ah in ancient Kemet, where Allah come from. Whole bunch of stuff, family. But the key is, within the name Yahweh, or Yod Hey Wav Hey, however you want to say it, within this special name, family, you see the letter. You see the man or the woman or the stick person here, right? Then you see the arm here in the names Ish and Isha. The name Adam and Eve linguistically don't tie to the name Yod Hey Wav Hey. I'm showing you that the name Ish and Isha, the first spirit man and spirit woman, they are attached to the Creator. You see? And even the Elohim, you see, coming forth, because we call Elohim created fate. See the letters? Stick man in the arm. You think that's by chance when you get into this, or is it by divine design? You see? So we see this is what brought creation into the manifest. Just like you got an X and a Y chromosome. When you get into science, these would be symbolic to your X and Y chromosome. Here, in relation to dealing with the language. The Y and the H would actually deal with Yah. Now, I'm going to show you something else that people don't know. This terminology, when you deal with the name Yahweh, or Yahuwah, Yahuwah, Yod Hey Wav, whatever you want to say. If you read this name, because you actually read from right to left when you say Yahweh, when you spell it out. But if you were to read it, from left to right, it becomes Hu He. And Hu He is the ancient Comedian name for God in another measure. So you see what I'm saying when I say linguistically, all of this stuff can be tied through etymology, family. So I'm going to stop sharing that right now. And I give honors to your brother Bachman Bay for asking that question. You see? Gratitude to you for that measure. And that was my special portion. And I ain't gonna hold y'all up no more, because I know y'all up in the wee hours with me, man. And that shows some dedication and love, family. And I'm gonna keep hurling this truth at falsehood and knocking its brains out, like the Grand Quran say. But I'll be back, family. It's been love, and I give honors to all of y'all that's watching, and I hope that our family was able to get a drawing from this. Moses meets himself. Know thyself in the great God within. When we're able to do that right there, family, that's when we're going to be able to change all our conditions. Because when you know you're moving according to the God within the self, you become confident in that. And you can move mountains. So you go beyond just faith. They say a little mustard seed of faith move mountains. But we deal with going beyond faith. But you got to get beyond belief to get beyond faith. Belief, faith, and fruition. But even faith moves up a notch. Because actually you start on 1 3-step ladder, you say faith, hope, and love. Belief, faith, and fruition. But then when you get into the wisdom wheel and the love, now you're talking about the triune of law. So that being said, family, it's been real. We love you. And we got more measures to bring on the manifest. We give honors to your questions and everything it is you wanted to ask. Or even things, that have inspired you. If I brought anything forth that been of good, I don't take any credit for it. Praise be to the Most High for using me as a vessel to be able to inspire you. Anything that I said that may have been offensive to you, it was not my intent to offend you. It was my intent to inform you. So that being said, family, peace, love, and law at all costs. These lessons I don't claim to be the supreme mastermind of, but I'm striving to master too. Islamism without the schism. We love you, family. Gratitude.